Holy. Renee Good! Renee! Stay with me now. When a judge entered TRO blocking feds from interfering with or arresting peaceful protesters in Minnesota, people picked up pretty quickly that the name David Easterwood, the reported name of an acting field officer director for ICE, was the same name as a pastor. People quickly put two and two together that it was the same David Easterwood, reportedly, who is a pastor at City's Church, which is on one of the wealthiest avenues in St. Paul, Summit Avenue. That's where the governor lives. So when community pulled up to chant the name of Renee Good, the lead pastor at the moment said, "Where are you? Where are you? Where are your people? Why are you not at Whipple every day?" I gotta tell you, it's giving the bishop from Castlevania just a little bit. But let's not get away from the report. A pastor at City's Church is an acting field officer for ICE. That's the report, and I gotta ask a question in earnest. In what interpretation of the Bible would Jesus have said, you know what? I think I'm going to sign up for ICE.
I think Jesus would be understanding.
We're about worship.
These folks.
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
Do you even have the capacity to fully understand all of this, what's going on? Because in the words of Deontay Wilder, this is mind-boggling. I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. Matthew 25:35. Apparently, David Easterwood ain't trying to hear that. He likes his Bibles like he likes his Epstein files. Highly redacted so it doesn't mess with his selective morality. I think this is a great time to come back to why they cover their faces in the first place. It's because there's no morality, no dignity, no respectability, and certainly no honor in being an ICE officer. And in this case, there is the outrageously seismic proportions to the report of someone being both a pastor and an ICE officer, and it begs the question, pastor for who?
David Easterwood is a pastor here. He is also the director of the field office for ICE in St. Paul. So someone who claims to worship God, teaching people in this church about God, is out there overseeing ICE agents. Think about what we've experienced. The murder of Renee Good at the hands of ICE. A Venezuelan national shot by ICE. A 6-month-old baby who almost died as a result of ICE unleashing military-grade weapons on our community. How dare you claim to be a pastor of God and you are involved in evil in our community?
Don Lemon going independent has been one of the best things to happen to boots on the ground journalism because, baby, the story he just broke. Protesters in Minnesota went to City's Church to shut down its service because they discovered that one of its lead pastors, David Easterwood, is actually an ICE agent. Are we shocked? Are we shocked? All you gotta do is make Jesus a few shades darker, and this is a direct, accurate depiction of what's happening right now, because this is not a church. This is not what he preached, and this is not what he practiced. This is deception.
Here have gathered over here. They're in the middle of the church. So in the beginning of the church service, the pastor was speaking, and the king stood up and said her piece.
Hello brothers and sisters, welcome back to the channel. I'm hoping that you are doing great from whatever you're watching me from. Now, what you're about to watch is an hypocrisy, and I'll call it a white hypocrisy because most of the time in religious institutions, this is something that we see happen, and historically, we have seen this happen. But now this is a little bit different. Remember, ICE and ICE agents have been a menace in the United States. They've been one of the biggest quagmires that Americans are struggling with right now. You understand the recent case happened, I think it's close to a month, something that happened in Mineapolis. You know, it is something which was so much devastating. And this one has left so many people raged, people asking questions. What is being a human so important, not so important to these people? But what's really crazy, in a recent church, I don't know the state like exactly that this happened, but in a recent church, there's this white preacher that people discovered made preaching, that people discovered that he is an ICE agent. Now, hold on, ask yourself this question. This is an ICE agent, and he is a preacher standing in front of everyone, teaching about how human life is so important. Is this not questionable to you, brothers and sisters? Because this brings an aspect of what we call religious hypocrisy, right? So when you talk about religious hypocrisy, we understand that this is something that has been embedded in what we call religious hypocrisy, because this moment exposes a recurring hypocrisy that many Americans have long pointed out in white-dominated religious institutions. Now, the selective application of Christian values. Understand that scriptures emphasize loving the stranger, protecting the vulnerable, and welcoming the foreigner, and showing mercy over judgment. Yet, historically, those values have been suspended when they conflict with nationalism, racial hierarchy, or state authority. So this contradiction isn't that a Christian works for the government, is that the moral agency preached on Sundays disappears when harm is done Monday through Friday in uniform. That moral flexibility is what people are reacting to, not faith itself, but how faith is being bent to excuse systems of control. Brothers and sisters, buckle up for this video. I'm gonna be back and then we'll have a great discussion in regards to this. As you know, I'm your host and presenter HTech Stories, but until then, let's watch the video. I'll be back with my 2 cents in regards to this topic. So let's get into it.
The protesters surrounded her, but this is a clandestine mission. I think they found out according to them, this is according to Operation Pull-Up, that one of the pastors here is a member of ICE. And so, here we go. This is peaceful?
Well, it's
Nobody fighting.
It's trespassing. How would you feel if I went to your house and I started yelling?
It depends on what I did, but not in my house. That's a whole different thing. I think these people would go inside of anybody's house.
This is the house of God.
Which makes it everybody's house.
Yes, it is.
This is peaceful?
That man really sat here and said, how would you feel if somebody came into your house and started yelling? We've got thousands and hundreds and thousands of people that we can ask that right now as ICE agents continue to violate the laws and break into their homes and start yelling at them and then, you know, kidnapping them and stuff. But I digress. Don, thank you so much for the incredible work that you're doing, for all the boots on the ground journalism that you're doing. Minnesota, we see you. We are so proud of you. Keep your foot on their necks. Flip those tables. Hold everyone accountable. Spread the story. Spread the news. And it is a time, y'all.
So the protesters in Minnesota just found out that one of their head pastors of a church in Minnesota is ICE, and they just stormed the church. Protesters showed up and disrupted the entire sermon and called this pastor out for what he is. He is the head pastor. I'm not sure of the name of the church yet, but they are there right now.
People here who are, I'm looking at a young man who's in the corner. He's frightened. He's scared. He's crying. People are leaving church. So, yeah. The guy's standing up now saying, get out of there. He's screaming.
This just goes to show you that you can't hide. You can hide your face, but you will be found out. And if you are going against your own fellow neighbors, like, what did you think was going to happen? Look at what you have caused in your church. Told y'all they were the Triple K, because this is exactly how the Triple K operated. Went out at night to go hang black people, covering their faces, and then in the morning on Sunday, preaching to the motherfucking church.
A pastor in St. Paul, Minnesota is alleged to be an ICE field director. I wish I was making this up, and I still hope to be wrong, but a lot of people online are alleging that the guy in this clip and the guy in this picture off of the city's Church St. Paul website are the same person. And after seeing the info for myself, he either has a twin, a doppelganger, or that is in fact the same person. And just listen to this guy.
Your presence underscores the importance of the work we do every day in service to the mission of the Department of Homeland Security and the American people. My name is David Easterwood. I'm the acting field officer.
He even gives the speech like a pastor. This information broke on the 17th of January, which is a Saturday. They held the service the next day, Sunday the 18th, and a group of protesters showed up and shut the service down, as they should have. Side note, the last few months have been wild for organized Christianity in America. We had the baby formula scandal, the Drewski megachurch skid.
Because I'm a Christian,
and I walk in the blood of Jesus.
And now we have a church with a Gestapo pastor. I'm shocked, but I'm not surprised. It's a story I got my eye on, and I will be posting updates as I see them. Shoot me a follow to stay up to date.
So Nakima Armstrong and the Racial Justice Network in Minnesota just had an action today inside of a church because they uncovered that the pastor of City's church, David Easterwood, is a regional director for ICE. They got the information, did not broadcast it everywhere, and they popped up on this church during service. Now, it doesn't surprise me hearing that Dave Easterwood is a pastor at a church and that he's also a regional director for ICE, because we know that the KKK was also judges, police officers, hell, the damn milkman. Now, I personally believe that everything is connected. And if y'all remember, in December, 1,000 evangelical pastors went to Isn't Real. I need to remind everyone, when it comes to that place, wherever there is smoke, there's a fire. So shout out to Nakima Armstrong and the Racial Justice Network, because ultimately it's not the government, but community members and community organizations that are boots on the ground that actually keep everyone safe. And in this time where we have all of these ICE agents running rampant in the streets, but people act like they don't know who they are, it is very refreshing to see them getting exposed.
How can you be an ICE agent and a pastor at the same time? Make that make sense. Have y'all seen the protest that's going on at this particular church? Well, this morning, this particular church in Minnesota, where they find out that the pastor is an ICE agent. I promise y'all, if they take these hoodies off, y'all will be surprised who's under those mask hoodies, okay? But dark and light don't go together. Hate and love don't go together. You can't be a Christian pastor teaching love, oneness, and togetherness. At least that's what you're supposed to be teaching. But then from Monday to Saturday, you're an ICE agent. From Monday to Saturday, you terrorizing the community. Because yes, y'all can say what y'all want to say. At this point, this ain't about the immigrants. At this point, all of America being terrorized, okay? But let me get back to what I'm saying. There's no way you could, in my opinion, how can you be a pastor and an ICE agent at the same time? I'm sorry, the two do not go. How can you be an ICE agent and a pastor at the same time?
I don't know why I don't see nobody else talking about this, but there's another white-owned church with a large immigrant congregation in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. It's called Living Word Christian Center. And during a time when people were out protesting the mistreatment of children in ICE facilities, this church thought it would be a good idea to take $35,000 of those tithes and offerings from their immigrant congregation and donate it to police to quell these protests. So do with that what you will, but yeah, great way to do what Jesus wouldn't.
Okay, I want to make sure I understand this right. So there's a pastor in Mineapolis area in Minnesota who allegedly is a field director of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement in Minnesota, aka ICE. So people showed up to protest during his church service because his day job is working for a federal agency. What is the point of this? Again, I want to be clear, as I say in all my videos. ICE overstepping boundaries, roughing people up, interrogating Americans without probable cause is, nobody should stand for that. It's anti-constitutional. But ICE simply existing as a department, a federal department or agency, is not simply wrong in itself. I understand that Minneapolis area and Minnesota have been dealing with things that a lot of other places haven't, but also the harassment that a lot of places have been enduring, Minnesota has experienced as well. But a protest inside a church during worship? I don't know if I've ever seen that before, especially by people who don't attend the service or attend the church or members of the church. That's a new one for me. And then media actually being inside and like while service is going on and interviewing people. I mean, of course he had to stop and actually do the interview. So, hey, that's his own autonomy. But I've never seen this before. And also, like, again, I know what's going on and how people perceive ICE, but like somebody simply working for an agency, I don't know a pastor who's been a cop, but I know plenty of people on the deacon board who are cops. And I've never seen anybody say they shouldn't serve in the church because they're a cop. I don't know. I don't know how to explain what's going on currently. This is one of those things that's just, as it stands today, it's just not my fight. And I'm just watching from outside.
Wow, you probably shouldn't be surprised that your church service got interrupted by anti-ICE protesters if one of your pastors is the acting field director for your local ICE office. Especially when he went out with Christine Ohm to say how proud he was of his ICE team and last week defended ICE's actions against observers that they arrested. See, when anti-ICE protesters protested at the Southern Baptist Cities Church in the Twin Cities today, David Easterwood, the aforementioned pastor, wasn't there, but Don Lemon interviewed the pastor who was preaching today. Jonathan Parnell told him that they were just there to worship Jesus and spread the love of Jesus. So interesting that a man who's supposed to be spreading the love of Jesus, a refugee who was later crucified by a violent state, is leading a brigade of agents who are working for a violent state to terrorize immigrants and refugees. Of course, though, the DOJ is investigating today's events for potential violations of the Federal FACE Act, which specifically states that the act should not be used to prohibit peaceful demonstrations. And they've activated the FBI too. So interesting that they can investigate peaceful protesters, but not the ICE agent who shot Renee Good.
So over on Instagram, there was a post that somebody made from a cell phone video from the church today in Minnesota, where protesters came in during their service. The reason that they did this, one of the lead pastors of this church, I use pastor very loosely, is also the director of a field office in St. Paul, Minnesota for ICE. This very concerned Christian here, okay, very concerned about everything, used slurs to my comment. That's him. Shocker. This very concerned, very devout Christian had a lot to say to me also. That's him. Shocker. This extremely devout, very good Christian was concerned that I use pronouns at my advanced age. Once again, another shocker. So needless to say, these very good Christian men are very concerned about the protests at the church today.
Protesters just found out that a head pastor at a church out there is allegedly working with ICE. And when I tell you the people were shocked, they showed up to that church in real time and disrupted the entire sermon. Walked right in and called him out for exactly who they believe he is. This man is a head pastor, a spiritual leader, somebody preaching love, community, and protection on Sundays, while allegedly helping tear families apart during the week. And now the whole congregation is seeing the consequences of that double life. This just proves one thing: you can't hide forever. You can cover your face, you can play holy, you can blend in, but the truth will come out. Because if you're moving against your own neighbors, your own community, what did you think was going to happen? And yeah, people are mad. They're comparing this behavior to the way the KKK used to operate, hiding in the dark, then showing up to church like nothing happened. Look at the damage you caused. This is what happens when betrayal gets exposed.
Protesters in Minnesota went to City's Church to shut down a service because they discovered that one of the lead pastors, David Easterwood, is actually an ICE agent.
David Easterwood is a pastor here. So someone who claims to worship God, teaching people in this church about God, is out there overseeing ICE agents. Think about what we've experienced. The murder of Renee Good at the hands of ICE.
Their demands were clear. Justice for Renee Good, that was shot and killed by ICE agent in Minneapolis.
A church service was interrupted today by protesters who were protesting ICE. And they went into the church. Why? Because One of the pastor is a field branch officer for ICE in Minneapolis. And you guys know what happened with Renee Good. She was recently shot by ICE, and because of that, this group of protesters are basically saying we cannot have where church leaders who are head of ICE or a field branch officer for ICE leading church. It's not okay. So these protesters took it upon themselves, decided that they're going to interrupt Sunday church service. Went in, they were chanting no ICE. I think they were saying the F word in church. Pretty bold, pretty bold. So of course there's always two sides to the story. I looked onto both sides, the liberals and the conservatives, and conservatives are saying this is ridiculous, people can't even worship anymore. And then of course the liberals are saying, yeah, that's how you get stuff done, that's how it needs to happen, blah 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 blah. Okay, this is kind of off topic for me because I'm really not wanting to get into this politics anymore. I've gone into it so much, and there's really not a difference whether you speak about it or not. It's all about your action. So in my opinion, if you are attending a church that has a member, much less the pastor or one of the pastors who are part of ICE or a field branch officer for ICE, I don't know if I would feel okay being at that church. Only because maybe if they're a member, I'd be okay with it because members, yeah. But when you have a pastor who is, that kind of tell you kind of what kind of church you're going to. And I'm going to say again, being a liberal means you basically accept human beings for who they are. You're not criticizing, you're not putting people down, you're not making them feel a certain way. You are accepting them as they are. Whatever color they are, whatever race they are, whatever sexual orientation, whatever it is that they are, you are accepting them that way, right? So with that being said, I'm proud to be a liberal. Like I don't care what anyone say. I feel like that's being human. When you see people or children getting killed in schools, that's heartbreaking. When you see people getting killed in churches, that's heartbreaking. Now if that does not affect you, why? Because you're not a liberal. I don't understand how you think, and I'm not gonna put you down. I know you guys are thinking that we're soft and all that, but this is just my opinion. The suffering of human beings should tug on your heartstring a little bit, and if it doesn't tug on your heartstring, there's something there. So of course I listened to both sides of the story, and both sides have their own views, and they both feel like they're right. So the long and short of it is, it doesn't matter what happened. We are never, ever, ever. We'll never come together. It's not going to happen. I just don't see it. We'll never think alike. Obviously, there are different types of humans here. There are those who think with their hearts, and there are those who think with their heads. The question is, who's wrong, who's right? What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that what the protesters did, was it right? Was it wrong? Because like right now, what's happening is I think they're probably going to start having federal charges on them. Why? Because they're saying the government is basically saying that the church is a protected space, and that you should be free to go and worship and not have any issues. But what about those people who got killed? So many African Americans got killed in churches. Those are protected spaces, and there was no outcry for that, none at all. So like the question is like, why is there such a big outcry right now? They didn't really hurt anyone. They went in and they protest, basically saying, if your pastor is the leader of a field branch for ICE, who's literally going door to door, who are dragging people out of cars, who are killing people, that's a horrible organization. They are hurting a lot of people, and I don't care. Like, no one can come to me and tell me that, oh, they're just immigrants. I don't give a crap, because you know what? We are all immigrants. If you were saying, oh, they're immigrants, guess what? Four generations down, your great-great-great-great-grandparent was an immigrant. So I don't care. Like, that's not even an argument. They're human beings, and no one should be treated like that. It doesn't matter where you live, and especially this country, we pride ourselves in the way we treat people. And for this to be happening, it's just been a huge lie. Well, I mean, I already know because I've been through it growing up in South Florida and the way they treated African Americans. I've been through it. My sister's been through it. I know. No one can tell me anything. Been there, done that. Anyway, my point is, if there's a leader of a church, supposed pastor, who actually is a part of ICE, it's not okay. And I may have gone off the rant a little bit.
So anti-ICE protesters just disrupted a morning church service in Minnesota, and former CNN host Don Lemon was there for whatever reason. So it happened on January 18th at City's Church in St. Paul. Protesters stormed into the sanctuary mid-service, chanting "ICE out" and accusing one of the pastors of being an actual field office director for ICE in the region. Worship was halted, protesters refused to leave, and the whole thing was live-streamed as part of their campaign against recent ICE enforcement actions. The DOJ isn't taking this lightly. Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon says her office is investigating potential violations of the FACE Act, which is a federal law that protects houses of worship from interference. She called it an attack on religious freedom and said the FBI is now involved. This wasn't just a protest, it was a targeted disruption inside of a church. Here's a little bit of the video of that.
Brothers and sisters, welcome back to the channel. I'm hoping that you're doing great. Now let's just have a talk about this. When we talk about religious hypocrisy, you see it's the same case when back then when people used the Bible to make black people suffer, right? We are seeing the same representation of what is happening. Understand that this is an preacher. He is endowed with the skills of knowing what is right and what is wrong. He knows how life is important, and he understands how being vulnerable, being understanding, being compassionate to people is so much important. If I'm not wrong, these are what the scriptures say. But we are seeing an aspect of hypocrisy when the same person stands on the altar and tries to tell you the importance of being compassionate, the importance of understanding people, because now this is what we call hypocrisy, right? This is what is happening right now is what we call hypocrisy. Now, this moment exposes a recurring hypocrisy that many Americans have long pointed out, especially black people. Black people have talked about this. Now, white religious hypocrisy, as critic describes it, is less about individual intent and more about structural comfort with power. Let's talk about it. Many white churches in America were never forced to confront the state as an oppressor, but instead they grew alongside it. So it benefited from it, and they also benefited from it, and often sanctified it. That we saw it through slavery, we saw it through segregation, we saw it through colonialism and mass incarceration, right? All these are found in theological justification within white Christian spaces at various points in history. And so in that context, a preacher dabbling as an ICE agent feels less like anomaly and more like a continuation, a modern expression of faith being used to spiritually soften and legitimize state violence rather than challenge it. So we're talking about this, brothers and sisters, because this is something which is happening and it needs a voice. It needs people to talk about it, right? Now, what makes this especially devastating for congregants is the intimacy of religious leadership. Understand that a preacher hears confessions, counsels families, prays over fears, and speaks about salvation and compassion. Understand that. So if members include undocumented immigrants or mixed status families, the revelation that their spiritual guide also participates in an enforcement system capable of destroying their lives feels like a spiritual surveillance, because it reinforces a painful lesson many marginalized communities already know, that institutions promising safety can quietly be sites of exposure and danger. That sense of betrayal goes beyond ideology because it strikes at human dignity. That's what it does. This controversy also reveals how religion is often weaponized selectively. Now, in American life, Christianity is frequently invoked, condemn the poor, police sexuality, or enforce obedience, while remaining silent or even supportive. When policies harm migrants, refugees, or black communities, the selective morality fuels the perception of hypocrisy. When religion consistently bends towards borders, property, and authority, but hesitates to defend human life with the same passion, people begin to question whether the faith that is being practiced, whether the faith that is being practiced is the same about God at all, or about preserving a social order. I hope you'll get to understand that. And at the same time, it's important to distinguish critique from caricature. Not all white Christians support ICE abuses, and I think we saw majority of them get raged, get mad at all of these things that were happening, and when the truth was coming out, and may actively resist. They may actively resist them, often at great personal cost. But the anger surrounding this case reflects frustration with dominant religious culture, because not every individual believer, people are reacting to patterns rather than from institutions that benefit from oppression. So the cancellation is less about punishment and more about community withdrawing moral legitimacy. So, brothers and sisters, please let me know what you think and feel about this video, because I feel like this is a topic that we need to talk about deeply, and understand that this is what happens. Understand that we all need to talk about these topics, but because at the end of the day, we stop talking about them, they affect the citizens. And it is also important for black folks who are watching this video to understand that this is how even colonialism happened, because they preached using the Bible, but what they did on the grounds were different, because they went ahead and massacred a lot of black people. So this is always just a reflection of what usually happened and what people should be expecting, right? So please, brothers and sisters, let me know what you feel and think about this video. But until then, I'm your host and presenter, G Stories. Until then, peace, love, and harmony. Salute.